I'd like to call to order the meeting of the St. Mary's County Board of Education for Wednesday, October 25th, 2017. May I have a motion to move into executive session?
I move to enter into the executive session to discuss student issues, Maryland Local Government Code Article Section 9-512A10, and administrative function items, Maryland General Provisions Code Article Section 3-104.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
She's laughing because she didn't have anything.
Wait until you see. All right, I'd like to reconvene the meeting of the St. Mary's County Board of Education. We will stand and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jim's on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Do you have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We will start. First, I'd like to welcome everyone. Sorry, everyone, I'm gonna bomb on your time here. It is Unity Day today, and I'm gonna start with the board reports. Unity Day is all about coming together, anti-bullying, anti-harassment. I don't know if any of you have seen the items on the national news over the past few weeks. The student at LSU that was that tragically died during a hazing incident, pledging a college fraternity, that was actually the son of a high school classmate of mine. So to read the horrible posts that this family is going through right now, all because he wanted to be part of a group. They have brought charges against the gentlemen that were in the fraternity. There was one man that was identified that kind of had it out for him, quote unquote, just to separate him and cull him from the group and not have him be part of the fraternity. So, with that being said, they are starting a foundation, Fly High Max. I remember seeing all the Facebook posts as he was accepted to LSU. He was so happy, and less than 30 days after being there, he was dead. So from that, I know we don't have fraternities or hazing or drinking in our schools, but this is where it starts. In elementary school, middle school, high school, we all know who the popular kids are. We all know who the kids are that just don't quite fit in. So my challenge to everyone is that if you see someone there that isn't quite fitting in, then you make them fit in. You make them part of your group, and you reach out to them. Thank you very much.
So recently I attended a General Assembly meeting for the St. Mary's Association of Student Councils, and we did focus a lot about citizenship, and it tied into the theme of bullying, and a big part of what we were talking about was cyberbullying, and how it starts in middle school and high school with the increase in social media usage, and the fact that, at the end of the day, we can't stop students from using social media because it's a positive tool that we use. We even use it for our school systems. I mean, it can do a lot of good. So during the meeting, we focused a lot about digital citizenship in the sense that how you can use social media for good and how you can use it safely. So we had library media specialists from Chopticon High School and Leonardtown Middle School come in and present a little bit about safe usage. And then we also talked about digital footprints and how, at the end of the day, what you put on social media will stay there for quite a long time. And for seniors applying, and for juniors especially, colleges look at what you post on social media, and that digital footprint stays there for quite a long time. So we actually had Miss Christine White from the college come down and talk to us about she was actually she is part of the admissions committee, so the students got a firsthand interpretation of what exactly they look at, and it was quite shocking to a lot of the students the amount of impact that what they have on social media can stay there for quite a long time. So that theme of citizenship is pretty important, and we continue to talk about that at our Superintendent Student Leadership Advisory Council meeting, which first it's the Slack group, the Slack committee, and we continue talking about the impact that social media can have, and we talked a lot about trolls and how even though communication can be used for good, at the end of the day there are a lot of ways that social media can be used in a negative manner, and we focused a lot about Chopticon High School, Great Mills High School, Leonardtown High School, and Fairlead, working with their principals in order to enact different types of programs that incentivize the sense of unity in school and a positive learning environment. Yeah.
I, along with some of my fellow board members, attended the Book Character Family Literacy Night at Lexington Park Elementary School. Had a great time. Some of the teachers and administrators dressed up. You know, the principal from Lexington Park was dressed up as a cat in a hat. There was also some people there from the Lexington Park Library. There was some books and showing the different reading levels. It was interesting to hear that. Then everyone met in the cafeteria, and then we were separated to go to whether it was kindergarten, pre-K, you know, so you went to different areas, and they had an activity for the parent and child, and also went over, I can't even think of the word, the responsive classroom, yeah, the responsive classroom. And so we were with Miss Wright, who was in kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher, dressed as a ladybug for the day. So she went through what it looks like for their class, for a responsive classroom. So, you know, the students come in, they sit in a circle, you know, how they, like the other morning they greeted each other and they had their eyes closed and had to, you know, call out somebody else's name. You know, so some just very creative ways for the students to get to know one another, to become comfortable with one another, and be able to share when they first get there, so that they're set for the day. They, you know, they shared a little bit about, you know, maybe what they did the night before, and then they're all ready to get ready and learn. So it was very interesting. I asked her about coming back and actually seeing it in action, you know, with the students there. So that'll be my next project, going there. And she asked me to come at the beginning, you know, like sometime soon, and then also come at the end of the year and see the difference of how the students do their morning routine. So.
Last week, I was, along with the board members, accompanied Mr. Smith up to Annapolis. We made a presentation, the capital improvement program, and I won't say any more because I'm sure other members will have things to say, but it was a very rewarding day for, I think, all of us. My wife was reading the Washington Post a couple months ago, and there was an interesting article about the Green Valley book complex in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We knew it was going to be a nice day on last Saturday, so we just got in the car and we drove to Harrisonburg and spent part of the day rummaging through, I would guess it's about 50,000 square feet of books. And if you ever get a chance, for all you book lovers, that's a great resource. The prices they're new books, so I thought they'd be used. They're all new books, and they're very well priced. I mean, a book that normally would sell for $15 was selling for $4 or $5. And it reminded me when I was in Portland, Oregon one time. There's a bookstore named Powell Bookstores, and they primarily sell used books, and it's probably the largest used bookstore in the United States. It's unbelievable, and you could spend 3-4 days in there. So we enjoyed that weekend. We also attended the Oyster Festival last weekend, and everybody knows about the Oyster Festival. It's sponsored by the Lexington Park Rotary Club, which I happen to be a member, and it's one of the largest fundraisers in the county. I think we grossed last year about $140,000, and we netted about $70,000 in profits. And a lot of the funds that we collected went to the school system, both scholarships to the teachers and to the students. So next year, when you see the Oyster Festival, please attend, spend your $10, support the vendors, and most of these proceeds will come back right to the school system. That's all I have.
Mrs. Washington?
Okay. I attended the NAACP Annual Freedom from Fund Banquet, which was held Saturday, October 21st. And at the banquet, the St. Mary's County Public Schools System received an award, and I will read it. NAACP Opening Doors for Diversity and Inclusion Award, presented to St. Mary's County Public Schools in recognition of sincere appreciation of the work you are doing to provide minority citizens and all citizens with opportunities for education, career development, and employment. Janice T. Wildfire, President, October 21st, 2017. And I accepted this award on behalf of the Board of Education members and the Superintendent of Schools. And I will pass this around. Is it okay to pass around?
Just give it to Mr. Smith.
Well, I'll give it to you, and the board members will see it later. And he can put this in a special place. Here's the program booklet, and a gift which was given was like a paperweight for the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is located in Washington, D.C.
That's lovely.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen. That's it.
I attended Chapter High School to see the induction of students into the Ark and Dove chapter of the National Honor Society. There were about 40 students who were inducted into the National Honor Society, and congratulations to all the students who worked so hard, not just academically, but demonstrating service and citizenship and leadership in order to be selected to be inducted. So congratulations to all.
Wonderful. We definitely had a very busy week. We did travel up to Annapolis together. I then traveled up to Baltimore to go through capital improvement project planning for all of the work that we're doing. We always need to remind ourselves that it is quite an investment that the county and the state makes in education for capital projects, for taking care of the buildings in which we are able to educate children every single day. So it is definitely worth the time that it takes to plead our case to those people that ultimately hold purse strings. So we will continue to do so. Roma spoke of the SLAC meeting, the first SLAC gathering. I think it went really well. We did have representatives from all of the high schools and Fairleigh Academy. We were joined by all of the principals for a portion of it, which I really take time out of their busy day to be in that conversation and facilitate that conversation. We were joined by Dr. Wathauer and Alonzo Gaskin from the NAACP, and we also had Ms. Carmen Phelps, the Chief Diversity Officer for CSM, come in and work with us and talk through a lot of the things that were on their kids' minds. It was great. I did a follow-up meeting with Leonardtown Middle School to talk to their students in the Principal Advisory Committee, and Spring Ridge Middle School this morning for the students in their Principal Advisory Committee to hear what's on their mind and talk about what's going on in the school and talk about student voice and how important it is that ultimately, if we want to see things change, it's going to need to start with children. So that was really quite productive. One of the things I did get the opportunity to do today, and it was the first time I've been able to do that so far this year, and it was really fantastic, was I visited the fire and rescue program that's being hosted and held at the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department. There are 17 kids enrolled in the fire and rescue program. They have just completed the first portion of that year-long program, and they started with the most fun, Firefighter 1, where they actually got to go out and do some live burns down at the Bay District Firehouse and the fire tower. They were really excited about the program. They're doing really well. The instructor, Rich Wilson, tells me, and he said not because he was in front of the 17 kids, but he said this is the best group that he has worked with, and he's worked with groups for about the last 10 or 15 years to the program. So really great job with all of them. I do believe that we're going to have a very active conversation when it comes to money this year. We're going to have an active conversation when it comes to the capital improvement budget, and following that, the operational budget. And I just need everybody to pay attention and become involved and engaged in the process. So thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. We have one recognition tonight, Mr. Ashley Varner. There you are. Building service recognitions. Oh, and Stacy
And
Sweet.
Miss Stacy
Sorry.
Sweet.
I don't have my glasses on.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for the time this evening for members of the operations department to come and share with you and kind of extend our celebration from Building Service Appreciation Day, which we celebrated on October 2nd. I'm sure you're aware of that. We're here to shed the light on a very hardworking group of people. And not just the hardworking folks that clean the school, but our school-based operations personnel are, as you know, an integral and essential part of each school community. They're problem solvers, they're collaborators, they're committee members, mentors, role models, co-workers, friends, and above all, supporters of education in St. Mary's County. So we'd like to share some of the things that we're doing for Building Service Appreciation Day, several weeks removed from that day, but with you. We're very fortunate within the operations department and proud actually to have such hardworking individuals at all of our school sites. A couple of photographs here for everybody to look at. We do have very efficient, effective, hardworking crews at every school site. As you can see in these photographs here, October 2nd was filled with lots of appreciation from students, from teachers, faculty members, administrators, members of the school community. You can see some of that exemplified here at our schools. It was a really great day for everybody. It's something we're definitely going to be observing every year. We're also going to share with you a presentation of our Glossy Award trophies, which we've been doing since 2003 in using different methods. For those of you who don't know, our Glossy Awards are awarded for excellence in these areas: customer service, logistics, most improved cleanliness, overall cleanliness, perseverance among the crew in support of others. Mr. Smith, would you like to come up and join us for some of those award presentations? Okay, I'll call your school. Come on up. We have awards for you, and stay up here because we have lots of pictures to take of you after the fact. First, we'll call up Leonardtown Middle School. We have Charles Herbert, building service manager there. Next, from Margaret Brent Middle School, we have James Dorsey, the building service manager at that location. From Letty Marshall Dent Elementary School, Dwayne Johnson, building service manager there. Thank you. From Esperanza Middle School, we have Larry Mills, the assistant building service manager at that location. From Leonardtown Elementary School, Charles Holden, the building service manager there. From Oakville Elementary School, we have Elvis Frederick, the building service manager. Chopticon High School, Tyrone Bannister, he's the building service manager as well. Tyrone's not going to be with us here this evening. We'll talk about his round of applause with him tomorrow. From Preview Knowles Elementary School, Joe Gordon, building service manager. From Town Creek Elementary School, Margaret Holton, our building service manager. George Washington Carver Elementary School, Mark Binkley, he's our building service manager. From Benjamin Banneker Elementary School, Mr. Mark Frederick, he's our manager at that location. From Evergreen Elementary School, Linda Bonds, she's our building service worker at that location. From Hollywood Elementary School, William Butler, building service manager. Leonardtown High School, Austin Birch, building service worker at that location. Thank you, Austin. From Park Hall Elementary School, Vantora Jones, our building service manager there. From Captain Walter Francis Duke Elementary School, Jeffrey Spears, our building service. We do have awards for all of our schools. These are the ones that could appear this evening, so one more round of applause for these folks. You have to stay put. Nobody gets to go back to their seats. For the last 3 or 4 years, 4 years, we've been giving out a special award called the Al Harrison Service Award.
Yeah, click over there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Why won't you click? Look at that.
This award is given to individuals who exemplify the defining characteristics of the late Director of Operations, Al Harrison. Winners of this award exemplify these things: a dynamic span of exceptional service to the school system, an unyielding passion and dedication to academic and personal development of students, and a calm, caring demeanor when faced with adversity. I'd like to call up Ms. Jennifer Gilman to make the first introduction of our first Al Harrison Award winner.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's always an honor to be here in front of the board, so thank you all so much, and Superintendent Smith. I have 3 words that I just wanted to share this evening: persistence, committed, and dedicated. And I don't think I need to say anything else except always smiling. And those words describe Mr. William Butler, Bunny, affectionately known to all of us, for such a tremendous person, both at Hollywood Elementary School and wherever you see him in our entire community. Because he is persistent in the task that is given to him. He is committed to all 543 students at Hollywood, to 72 staff members, to every parent, and to anyone that he ever interacts with. And he is dedicated. I cannot tell you, and I have worked with a lot of people in my almost nearly 30 years in this school system. I know no one that matches his dedication to our school. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Butler with this wonderful award.
There you go.
Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
Still to stand. We have one more Al Harrison Service Award to present today. I'd like to call Mr. Chris Dyson to make that presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Board members, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And most importantly, you guys, on behalf of every administrator across the county, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do. We realize that we do not have or not able to do our job without you guys, and we sincerely appreciate everything that you do. Thank you. I'd like to take a second to talk to you guys about Mark Frederick, who is our building service manager. He's over there right now, unsuspecting that I'm here talking about him. Mark Frederick is a gentleman that I've known for the past 5 years, and every year I get to know him a little better and better and better. And one thing I can say about Mark Frederick is that he wears so many hats in our building. I don't know how he manages them all. We will find that Mark, or you will find that Mark he's a mentor, he is a coach, he is well beyond just somebody that opens up the doors in the morning, closes them in the evening, and makes sure that our building is clean. He is much, much more than that. I consider Mark in Benjamin Banneker Elementary School, I consider him to be one of our teachers. And I say that with great confidence because Mark is also able to work with our students on many different levels, whether it's a student in crisis, whether it's a student that needs a break, whether it's a student that is just interested in what he's pushing around the school. Mark always finds time to dedicate himself to our students and to making Benjamin Banneker a better place. Another one of his hats is allowing me to just go to him when life seems to not work out my way. He's a man of few words, okay, and I'll just pour my heart out to him. Mark, you know, I was telling him about my brother doing something that annoyed me. And I was telling him all about this, and he looks at me and he goes, yep. And at the time, it was all that I needed to hear. He said everything. The world was righted, and once again, the wisdom of Mark Frederick prevailed. So it is with great honor that I'm afforded this opportunity to come up here and speak to you guys about just a truly remarkable, wonderful individual that I've had the privilege of getting to know for the past 5 years. I look forward to continuing to work with him. Mark, congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations to Mr. Butler and Mr. Frederick. This concludes our program.
And I think what we'd like to do is
We're taking 10 minutes.
take 10 minutes.
my schedule.
We're going to take a whole series of pictures with people out here, and that'd be just great. So we could just take a pause, and we'll have.
We can take a pause. I will just say one thing. As a parent, you guys completely rock because being on the PTA, where's Mr. Johnson? He can relate. Friday night, the Halloween Carnival, we will all be there until God knows when, cleaning up. But you support everything at every school wholeheartedly. After sports events, after all of the things that the PTA plans that is, I'm sure, annoying to you, and you have to clean up popcorn and everything else. And I'm bringing pumpkins, so I'm going to need a cart Friday morning. Just everything. And the interaction, I completely echo what has been said, the interaction that you have with the students on a daily basis. I mean, honestly, Mr. Johnson, I think when we have, voting pie in the faces, he usually beats out most of the teachers at Letty Marshall Dent. So he definitely has a good rapport with all of the students, as I know everyone else does. So just thank you. So.
Thank you.
Great. All right, now I'm going to gavel out.
Yes, we're going to
Let us fall back in.
All right, I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Let's see. Public comment. Mary, no public comment, okay? Consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And our first item is the FY 2018 budget adjustment. Ms. Tammy McCourt, thank you for closing your door.
Hey, it's an excited group.
Happy celebratory.
There you go.
Good evening.
Evening.
So last month you heard from, or actually earlier this month, you heard from our auditors on the closing of the FY17 financial statement. We had a balance of $5.3 million in the undesignated fund balance. That was comprised predominantly of 0.44% of revenues in excess of budget, and that was mostly in the areas of interest income, state aid for medical assistance, and impact aid. On the expenditure side, that came in under budget by 1.73%, predominantly in the areas of utilities, bus fuel, non-public placement, and fixed charges, especially in the area of pharmaceutical rebates. So our request is to utilize that $5.3 million in a budget increase for textbooks, math textbooks in the amount of $2.2 million. That will support grades pre-K through 12. The last math book adoption was in 2009. We're requesting $2 million for a technology refresh for middle school, in addition to the completion of the high school refresh. We're requesting $1 million for OPEB. Our balance for OPEB that's been set aside to, as of the end of last fiscal year, was $41.3 million. And our last contribution to OPEB was in 2015 in the amount of $2.6 million. Currently, 13.46% of the actuary accrued liability is funded. And we're requesting $100,000 towards litigation costs for this fiscal year. So at this point, we ask that the Board of Education approve this agenda item as presented.
Any questions? Mrs. Weaver?
How much is usually held in the OPEB fund?
We don't typically budget anything. The last allocation to the fund was back in 2015. So it's just based on interest income that's been accruing since then. So we currently have the $41 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have no questions.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mrs. Washington.
Good, very good, thank you.
I'm just pleased that the revenues that we've been able to accrue will allow us to make some further progress on a variety of important fronts. So thank you.
I'm just gonna add, I think the textbook refresh is also a result of, the last time they were redone was what, 2009?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that will help in doing it with pre-K through 12 will assist everyone with the standardized testing also.
Correct.
And it'll be what we're looking at are texts and materials that are completely aligned to the Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards, which have been adopted in place and been used for the last 4 years. And so there are a host of materials that will that are out there that we'll be able to review and see which best fits the need. And just to emphasize the technology refresh that we're doing. We're getting life cycle out of our laptops and desktops of 4.5 to 5 years. So this is just to go back in. This isn't for additional technology resources. It's to refresh the laptops and desktops that were replaced 4.5 years ago. Almost 5 years ago is when we did our major technology implementation in the middle schools. And so we're getting good life and service out of the machines. And before anything that has life left in it will be maintained and refreshed and then redistributed. But that $2 million is really just to refresh that technology.
And it's still keeping the same ratio that we have.
We're still about 1 to 3 for device to student.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? All right. May I have a motion for this action item?
I move that the Board of Education approve the increase of the fiscal 2018 budget and approve the submittal of the fiscal 2018 budget adjustment to the Commissioners of St. Mary's County for their approval as required by the Annotated Code of Maryland.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McCourt.
Thank you.
Let's see, Mr. Jaffers and Ms. Tar. Imagine learning.
Imagine learning.
What you can do with Imagine Learning. You're going to tell us, aren't you?
Yes. Dave, I might need some help here, so.
Mr. Howard, did he break it?
10:20, good at 10:25.
No, you did when you were up there messing around during.
I fixed it. You'll notice that I was able to advance the slide and everything.
Yeah, but since then, it's been sketchy.
I was going to say, I think it was a bit bulky before that.
You know what? It's probably the toxic materials in the boat. And my orange ribbon from Kathy.
The lovely ribbon, it looks beautiful.
Hey, it's older than dirt, I got it.
Good evening. Thanks for your attention here this evening. This evening, Wendy and I are going to present an intervention for Imagine Learning for our English learners, as well as for our English language group here. English language learners and SMCPS started to use Imagine Learning in 2014. Imagine Learning reps visited St. Mary's County in the fall of 2016 and discussed with several principals the benefits of their program with struggling readers in general, not just those for the cohort of ELL. Imagine Learning granted several SMCPS schools last year access to their platform for the purpose of getting acquainted with the literacy intervention program. And then I believe Wendy attended the forum in April 17.
Right, so with Title III funds, I'm in charge of the ESOL, of English language learners, and with Title III funds, we've been using the Imagine Learning program with them for the last couple of years. We had a rep come down. I was able to schedule the rep with some of our other principals, our elementary principals, to kind of sit down with them and discuss the program, because it's not just for English language learners, it's for struggling readers and for special ed students, for just struggling readers in general and students with disabilities. So I wanted them to be able to hear a presentation. Well, it was very exciting. They wanted to pilot, and I think that's what we're talking about next.
Yeah, they being the principals. So,
yeah.
So Imagine Learning is a supplemental digital literacy program for emergent struggling readers, as Wendy talked about. ELLs as well, and students with disabilities. And it's the focal point is going to be for those students in pre-K through 6th grade, just in content. We could use it up for 7th and 8th graders if they're a little bit behind grade level. But again, for the content piece of this intervention, it's a focus point is between sort of K through 6. Every child receives explicit targeted instruction with an individualized learning path that continuously adjusts to their needs. The Imagine Learning platform allows teachers to access additional printable resources in order to provide more Tier 3 interventions.
Mm-hmm. So the teachers, the principals met with the Imagine Learning. They did their pilot last year, and really the feedback from the principals was like, please bring that back. You know, we really want that. So it's really why we're here, is to kind of talk about the benefits of Imagine Learning. I can speak to it because I've been using it for several years. But it really is, the students love the program because it's very engaging. There's some gaming involved. The teachers love it because they're able to go in and be behind the scenes, look at action area tools. Where exactly are the kids struggling with their literacy? Is it that they're struggling with reading comprehension or spelling or sight words? And it could cluster kids. Oh, there's 5 kids in my class that are struggling with this specific issue, and it will actually create groups for the teacher. So it kind of takes away that, you know, that burden from the teacher. It creates the groups individually. It takes it another step further, and if a student, one particular student, for instance, is having a problem with rhyming, the teacher can then take it a little step further, and there are some printable resources that the teacher can use. We do this often with the classroom teacher and the ESOL teacher. The student might be struggling with one particular concept. The classroom teacher will go to the English language teacher and say, please work specifically with this particular concept, and here are some paper resources to do that. So there's that Tier 3 intervention going on.
Yeah, and it's a nice segue because sometimes the teachers are looking for a nice, quick, they're doing stations in the room. This is designed to do 4 days a week, 20 minutes. It's a nice, quick, so you can differentiate the instruction in the classroom. So Mr. Smith talked about the refresh for some of our technology. So we can have the technology up in one part of the room. Teachers could be doing direct instruction, at least small group learning in the other. And Wendy sort of summarized all these benefits here for students and for teachers. The focal point is that it will provide personalized usage and growth for our kids. And the principals that we've talked to that sort of worked with this program. They're beating down the door. They really want us to sort of turn this over, and it times up really well with our November 1st, around November 1 or 2. That's when we start to really lock in interventions at the school. We give ourselves about 8 to 10 weeks working with the kids, and then we look at strengths and areas of improvement that we have to focus on, and at that point we can turn on our intervention in a more sort of specialized way at this time of the year. So, so we're here tonight to ask that the Board of Ed approve this agenda item as presented.
I have one quick question. Is it iPad-based or laptop-based or both?
Both.
Okay.
And that's what we really like in the ESOL world, because the kids are going from classroom to classroom, and if there is some time built in, it could be during a recess time, or it could be indoor recess, it could be the beginning, you know, in the middle school they have that time in the beginning of the day, some advisory time. It could be that they're getting that 20 minutes during that time. I, as the district supervisor, can go in and check usage, and then get that feedback back to the teachers. Oh, so-and-so's not quite there, you know, we want to get them back up to that 20 minutes a day. We've had parent nights where they've come in, they can use this at home, it's web-based. Parents love it, students love it. I mean, it's really, it's a neat thing.
That's a good idea with indoor recess. I mean, the iPads are gold. When your classroom gets the iPad cart during indoor recess, I mean,
Right.
you're it for that day. So that's really good. So.
And we're not relying on the program being on one particular computer in one particular classroom.
Right.
So getting that, you know, having that ability to get onto any computer or any iPad and have it, it's gold.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had a question regarding when you said teachers can step in and like check progress behind the scenes. So you had said like if a student had a problem with rhyming, they could print out resources for the students to complete. But is there any way like for teachers to actually reroute the individualized learning path that the program creates, or is that streamlined, I guess you can say? Because I would just like, from experience, like it, when we did things like this when we were younger, it seemed like teachers could print out resources, but it seemed sometimes it was the program was streamlined so that the teacher couldn't reroute where we were going or like what activities we could do. And I was just wondering.
I know that they can go in and launch particular activities for the kids based on what they feel they need to be working on too. So yes.
The program is interactive, so it does spit out. You know, if you're deficient here, then they're going to say, well, you should do X, Y, and Z. It's sort of it's personalized and it's adaptive to the students.
And the kids are going through that productive struggle to get to the next step. So the program is constantly moving the kid. And if the kid's struggling and they're not working, there's going to be alert to the teacher that they cannot get past this point, so you need to do something about it now at this point. And if the kid is advancing, it allows them to personally advance too, to move them according to their abilities. So.
And you had mentioned that students can do this at home. Is it often used for like homework purposes, or is it mainly for like instruction in the classroom?
No, we want them to do it here, but they can do it at home. We actually had, I was checking some usage over the summer, and we had some kids using it over the summer. I mean, it is engaging. So our next step is to then take, you know, these students that are going to be using it in the classrooms and the gen ed classes and really do a study to see how they do and how it aligns.
Response to intervention.
Yeah.
Actually see the true academic benefit of a program such as this.
Exactly.
But the game-based theory that it's using, it's much more immersive and engaging than perhaps something that you would necessarily have seen in like an Apex learning module or something like that, where it's very scripted.
Like Prodigy,
it's not designed like that.
Another benefit to it, I haven't experienced this with any other resource that I've been involved in, but Imagine Learning, the company, will pay for district leaders. They pay for them to go out twice a year, or they have 2 forums throughout the year. So as a district leader, I could go out once a year, and the research team, we meet with the research team of Imagine Learning, and they want to know what needs to be fixed. What do you need as a classroom teacher? What do you need as a principal? What do you need as an instructional resource teacher? And what do you need from a district standpoint with the program? So they really do listen, and they adjust on a regular basis. So I really like that. That was really neat to be a part of. at their
When,
expense.
if the students have mastered a certain skill, let's say the teacher puts out there, does then do they move on to another skill, or does the teacher have to, like what Roma was saying, program that in there, that,
No, it does it all on its own. It will, once the student has mastered the skill, it pushes them to the next thing.
The content is all the sixth grade, so once you start to show
Really
demonstrable
scaffold.
achievement, that moves you right on. And you could be, we were one grade level or two grade levels behind, we can mitigate that deficiency over time. So, yeah, it'll automatically and adaptively move students through that program, all the way through sixth or seventh grade content.
It's like Destiny, the online game, if it actually taught you something. I mean, it's as engaging as that. So if you could imagine that, these things that people are spending thousands of hours on, if it actually, developed their skill set for math or higher order thinking.
We had an English language learner come to us last February who came to us as a third grader. Her skill level for literacy in English was at a first grade. And over the summer she was working, and she's still, from February until June and a little bit over the summer. And so I can go in there and I look to see them. She's really progressing really quickly up. So she's mastering that first grade. She's mastering the second grade, all the literacy things that they have to know, and then she's getting close to that third grade. So the teacher has not had to do any of that. It's just happening on its own.
and it says here that there's 450, is that 450 licensures, so there's 450 students, or do they share any of the?
No, it's gonna be one for that particular student. We're gonna give it the licensure oversight to the actual school, and they're gonna decide which students are gonna have, based on their demonstrable performance data up to this point, which students will have that access. So,
Okay.
450 to static license for the entire, hopefully, year. So,
And the Premier License 7, is that, like, say you as, as one of them, or is this a teacher, is it a principal?
The premier licensing, I believe, has to do with the professional development that we get with that, the package. And that's one thing I do want to talk about too. The Imagine Learning reps are very responsive. They come down on a dime and do professional development for us. So we're getting ready to do another one. We're going to bring in classroom teachers and show them how to go in and look at those actionary tools. Look at the progress monitoring that they need to be checking on a weekly basis, so that this program is used to fidelity. So I think that package, is that right? It has to do with the amount of professional development we have access to.
yeah, the vendor's very, very responsive, and I guess the rub is that we are definitely going to monitor this with a lot more hard data. We're gonna monitor it with performance data that we have for our local assessments, juxtapose that with the performance on Imagine Learning, sort of maximizing the effect, and then we're gonna toggle back with the vendor, who's, Wendy said, they're very responsive, so we're hoping that they can give us a lot of insight going forward, so,
Thank you.
yeah.
I think you mentioned you have ESOL students as well. My wife retired from Undertown High, and she was ESOL certified. And like twice a year, we'd bring students over to our house. And what I recall was that most of these students are foreign-born, if not all of them. And they all were exceptionally gifted students. So it wasn't a remedial effort on her part. And I was curious, have you been using this IL imaging learning with the ESOL students? And it's working well for you?
Yes, it is. It's
Mhm.
teaching them English literacy. So
Mhm.
yes, there's not necessarily a cognitive issue going
Right.
on. There's no learning disability. It's just that it's teaching them English along the way.
Right.
Some of them are progressing really quickly because they are literate in their first language. Therefore, there's that being able to pick up a second language
Mhm.
and become literate in second language is happening very quickly. So, and some of them are not so much. And sometimes we can use the program to see, okay, there's an alert here. Maybe there is something that we need to be really focusing on, because they're not just struggling with language at this point. So it's been a really great tool for us.
Great.
And I would like to see the rest of the county using it, because it's not just for English language learners.
That's all I have.
I've already had my question. Go ahead, Mary.
I think this is a win-win for the students, the parents, the teacher, and our school system. The students can learn at their own pace. They're getting differentiated instruction, that you have a good collaborative relationship with the vendor. I think it's great. And they get instant feedback, and so they can just move on, and the students can see their progress, which will encourage them to continue on because they see it immediate. And it has that game type element with it that students are accustomed to. So I think this is a great program. Thank you very much.
The students are being assessed, and they don't even realize
They
it.
don't
They're
even realize-
constantly being assessed, and they don't even realize it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thank you very much.
So with 450 licenses, how are you going to determine who and which schools are going to receive the licenses? Because 450 across K through 6, with the number of elementary and middle schools we have, how's that going to work?
That's a good question. We decided with the help of the vendor that we wanted the feeder into Spring Ridge Middle School. We thought the feeder into Spring Ridge Middle School would help sort of optimize our performance over time, and everybody in that, those 450 seats in that corridor were going to help us sort of optimize our performance over time at Spring Ridge. These schools are having skin in the game. They are contributing to our pot of money here. We had a couple extra dollars that were left over from our interventions. Everybody's sort of paying into this, if you will, because they liked it, enough so that they are going to decide at those particular schools who have contributed some money, which grades, which kids are actually going to get that access. So.
Okay. And then what's your plan with respect to assessing the success of the program, and therefore whether or not you would look to request money in the budget to be able to offer it more pervasively throughout the system?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We're going to have a control and experimental group. We're going to look at pre-test performance as our control, and have the same students that are getting this access, getting this intervention, going to look at their performance over the course of the year, both on park level. If they're in a park grade level, we're going to access their park scores, and also look at local performance on SMCPS assessments compared to that control group that's not having access, that had the same pretest to begin the year with. So we're going to try to keep sort of control and experimental group going forward.
So this is a year-long license, and then are you looking to bring forward something more for next year, or are you looking farther down the road for that?
Yeah, year 2, they're giving us a 50% discount to the price. So 450 seats is actually, the price that you have in front of you is 50% of what it would be next year's budget, which I believe is $73,000. And they're going to give this access to us for 50% discount this year, so next year would be full price. And that's the sort of negotiation that we had going forward. So we'll keep the same seats. Kids probably will be different based on their performance, and we're still going to focus on that corridor down at Spring Ridge.
Okay. And then actually on page 4 of 7 of the other document, it tells exactly what the premier level is. And I think it's pretty much what Ms. Tarr said, looking at various access, professional development, and being able to reach out and have assistance whenever needed. So
There have been some states that have adopted Imagine Learning as a whole. So entire states have actually done studies, third-party studies, and Imagine Learning has come up. I mean, I can share that with you later, but I have a little bit of soft data myself. One particular year, a couple years ago, before we really truly fully implemented it with our English language learners, I focused on one particular group with one teacher, and she did everything the same. She did pull out the same with her English language learners. The only thing that changed that year was that she had her students on Imagine Learning for 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. She went from 11% of her students making 0.5% progress on their access, which is the language proficiency exam that they take, to 70% of her students. So it was a huge jump. And, I mean, I wasn't trying to document it, I was just kind of looking softly to see, what was going on. I mean, that was the only thing that changed that year, was the Imagine Learning. There's a lot of other testimonials like that with some other states, So I'd like to have Imagine Learning actually do a study with us too, just to really see. But it's all aligned to that access test, and that's what they were comparing it to. So.
Well, this is
Yeah, I was
wonderful.
like, from
I'm
that point on, I
I'm
gotta have
really
this.
pleased, and I'll look forward to hearing in a year how we do and what you propose is our next steps.
Right, because there's also, I pulled it up, there's also Imagine Espanol, so it's,
And Imagine Math.
oh, wow, so there, yeah, so, there's a little
So
bit,
it's coming.
hey, so there's a whole, right, baby steps, right, right. 450 seats, it's great. And I appreciate the relationship that you have cultivated with the vendor to be able to offer that level of access, $150 a seat, and we're only paying $75. That's pretty fantastic.
Right.
So.
And just to clarify, the English language learners are not part of this. I'm still using Title III money with that.
Right.
I'm just here on behalf of this program. for the
Fantastic
principals.
program to talk through. Right, we're not right.
Yeah, so
Well,
I believe in it.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I mean, we always talk about the fact that our struggling readers, if we can't help them where they need to be, get them where they need to be, then everything else begins to fall apart. So this to me is the core, and having success with this, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it, and to hearing how the students in the various groups do, and then figuring out where we go from here.
Great, absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Ready for an action.
All right. May I have a motion for this recommended action item?
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Imagine Learning software licenses for a one-year contract term of October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018 in the amount of $40,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hartwick. Job order contract.
Good
Good job,
evening,
Mr.
board
Howard.
members.
Good evening, how are you?
It was a little better than last time.
Yeah, right, wherever that thing is going.
Get that mouse under control.
Some time ago, I presented to the board information on job order contracting. And so tonight is the action item to hopefully award a contract based on that form. So before I get into the procurement and our recommendation, I just want to spend a little time with some more background about job order contracting and refresh your memory. So the job order contracting is specifically identified under COMAR 2303 Chapter 4 as a project delivery method, and they're very specific about it. And our approach has been, and the public school construction program encourages our local procedures to match the state procedures. And so that's one of the benefits of kind of a consolidated approach and consistency. So a little more history. Job order contracts were created in the 1980s, primarily by the military, to address a number of issues related to the traditional design, bid, build methodology. It was specifically in response to the time it took to procure projects, issues with bid protest, and poor quality of work. And since the 1980s, job order contracts have just flourished, and LEAs in Maryland use them extensively. The key to a job order contract is having an index that has fixed prices for specific construction activities and tasks. And what happens is the contractor uses that with the owner to establish a scope, and then apply their own multiplier. Now, and we're going to be using RS means. Most people use some form of RS mean. That's a national database, and so they do have weighted averages for different cities and different regions, and Waldorf is one of those. And the weighted average for Waldorf is 0.98, so it's a little less than the published unit price. So we did search a number of software possibilities and indices used by other agencies, and we came back to using the commercial renovation costs with RS mean data. It's a book that Mr. Whidden and I use extensively. We're familiar with it. There are no software licenses or charges, which can be very, very steep. So that was our primary reason. We intend to use the JOC contracts for both CIP and maintenance projects. The JOCs are especially advantageous for aging schools and QZAB projects, where we'll get approval of a project, but then we have a very short timeline to get that contract, get that job under contract. So the JOC is perfect for that. And like our previous unit price contracts, we essentially established an initial one-year term with option for 2 one-year renewals. I wanted to give you some examples of our potential uses. And remember that our local CIP now has categories for critical infrastructure and programmatic needs. And what that does is it kind of bunches together a lot of smaller projects. So the JOC, and a lot of those are replacement in kinds. So that's a good, I think, possible use of the JOC contract. But some of the specific things we could be possibly looking at is replacement of chillers, cooling towers, other key components of HVAC systems. We're still doing ADA restroom upgrades. We have an ADA restroom upgrade on QZAB 18 at Park Hall coming up. Electric switchgear replacement. There's been a number of those over the last couple of years. We have lighting upgrades, both for efficiency, but we've also got lighting upgrades for the theater lights at all 3 high schools. We're almost there with replacing out all the classroom locks with locks that can be locked from the inside of the classroom, but we got a few more. And then from time to time, we'll have office alterations at a number of facilities. And so that's a good use of the JOC contract. So in terms of procurement, we used a process where we prepared a request for proposal, and we advertised that on eMaryland Marketplace on September 22nd. The request for proposal asked for technical and price proposals both that we could evaluate. And continuing with what I think is strong interest in our work, we received 19 requests from firms for the RFP package. On October 10th, we received 8 submittals. In terms of our technical evaluation, we gave our highest consideration to firms with extensive K through 12 experience. We think that's essential. K through 12 work is unlike any other work. We wanted to understand their ability to prepare job order contracts. I wanted to see their proposed subcontractors because RS Means is a very comprehensive list of construction activities, and I wanted to make sure that they had the relationships with a number of subcontractors, and I wanted to understand the quality of those subcontractors. So that was important to us. And also the responsiveness, both for proposals and responsiveness to the actual work. Our price proposals included a number of price components. There were coefficient for non-wage projects, which make up probably most of the work that we're going to do. Coefficient for projects that would fall under Davis-Bacon, and that's primarily the QZAB projects. I wanted to have labor rates for non-priced items because there's always gaps, and I wanted to kind of set the parameters on that. And more towards a risk assessment, I wanted the contractors to list what their percentage markup would be on the contract sum for performance and labor and material bonds. And generally, if you see those rates between 1 and 2%, you know that they haven't had a lot of claim from surety. That's what that means, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, 2 proposals were incomplete, unfortunately, and so we deemed those proposals non-responsive. We couldn't complete the evaluation on them. So in terms of procurement, I hope you can read that. I'm not sure I can read it. Oh yes, I can read it here. So we have the 8 firms. You'll see at the very bottom were the 2 firms that we had to deem non-responsive. And this was kind of an interesting mix because it was new firms, large firms, regional firms, and local firms. I couldn't have asked for anything more. The total score was 100. We scored it 50-50 because we wanted to say all things being relatively equal in terms of technical proposals, we wanted price to be the determining factor, and in fact it was. You can see that the first 4 firms were very close. The 4th firm had a higher multiplier rate, and that hurt them because they had a very good technical proposal. So we've got 3 listed there. I will say the multipliers for all 3 firms are below what we typically see for job contracts. So I'm very pleased by that. I have 2 of them that are below 1, which is very unusual, and I'm excited about that. So tonight we're gonna ask that you make multiple awards. We got good recommendations, obviously, for all 3 firms. Page International does a lot of work for PG County Public Schools and Washington, D.C. Public Schools. FHP is a national firm, a very large firm, but they have a regional office in Falls Church, and we only evaluated the projects that the Falls Church regional office was responsible for, and they got a very strong recommendation, by the way, from Frederick County Public Schools. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, you know the firm of Dennis Anderson Construction. I have a tremendously high regard for Dennis Anderson Construction. They've held a number of unit price contracts in 2008, along with a number of bid projects where they were the low bidder. Their performance has always been excellent. The responsiveness has been timely. And so we think that Dennis is especially well suited for the smaller projects that FHP and Payne may not be willing to do because of the distance and the scale of the work. So our recommendation to you tonight is that we do make multiple awards. We're going to ask that you give us the authority to award individual purchase orders up to $150,000. Now, that is consistent with what we've asked on a previous unit price contract, which was an indefinite quantity contract. And that worked well for us in terms of efficiency, in terms of coming to the board, but also getting a lot of work done in a short period of time. Any purchase order over in excess of $150,000 we would bring back to the board. And I would offer that, that we would be glad if the board chooses or desires to provide monthly communication updates identifying the purchase orders awarded under the job order contract, so you could have an idea of who is being awarded to and the amount. So that's the summary of our recommendation. And so we do ask that you approve the agenda as presented.
I think it would be helpful if you did a communication update, just to kind of keep us abreast of how things are going and, you know, and things like that. Since there's 3 different contractors, does each one have like their own specialty? Like this one?
Man, that's a great question. And a couple things, if I can elaborate it a little bit. I think there are advantages. We've done multiple awards on the indefinite quantity contract for unit prices, and that has always served us well, because we do find there's a level of expertise that some firms have that others don't. And I can say, particularly as I look at the subcontractors for the awardees, there are some highly qualified subcontractors that, you know, I would say are far superior to some others. Not all subcontractors, but some. I think the other advantage is that we can, and I think this is important as we start this process, is that we have the right to ask all 3 firms to submit proposals. And I want to do that as a check on it, right? So that's another criteria. MBE participation can be a criteria. There are some firms that do a fantastic job of MBE outreach to real subcontractors and not just suppliers. So if we do have a state job where we set an MBE goal, that could definitely be a consideration for it. So that's some of the thinking about multiple awards and how I see the advantages of multiple awards.
Okay, thank you very much.
You mentioned Davis-Bacon as a baseline for cost. I've had a lot of experience with Davis-Bacon, and it's arguably one of the better systems, but depending on the type of contract delivery, I've found that Davis-Bacon can be much higher.
Yes.
Than maybe the local costs could be. So my question is, do you have any database or data, for example, to juxtapose the RS means with your own data for, you know, it costs us so much for a ton of for a chiller, so much per ton, if you will. Do you have any data like that you could compare? With RS means?
We strive to keep every record that we can on file for exactly that reason. We do maintain our own database. That helps us in our coordination with capital planning and budget preparation. But in terms of wages, we have really three comparisons. One is the unit price contracts that we've used before. RS Means itself has wage rates. And then we have the prevailing wage from DLLR, and then we have the wage determination from Davis-Bacon. And now it is up to the contractor to challenge the Davis-Bacon wage determination. And for whatever reason, I don't see the survey taking place much in St. Mary's County. I don't see many changes. So we actually have gone and made some requests because we think there's some holes in the wage determination, but we haven't gotten a response back. But those are the tools that we will use in order to do the Davis-Bacon. But again, the QZAB project is probably the only projects that we would be required to utilize the requirements of Davis-Bacon and the wage determination. So it's a very minor part, but necessary to document that and have that available.
You mentioned, of course, your price points. You're going to be looking hard at that, and then you talk about the technical evaluation. In the technical evaluation, I think you touched on a lot of it in terms of experience, contract delivery, making the schedule. And I was just curious, in your selection here, the top 3 contractors, they're pretty close, if I recall.
They are very close.
And so I would have to say, just on this example, that these 3 contractors, that technically they were pretty well closely measured. Is that correct?
They were. I mean, I don't think, we scored it 50-50, as I said, because I really wanted all things being generally equal that the price would determine, and I think that was a fair way to deal with this particular procurement. I think of the 3, none was less than 45 out of 50, and we had one at 60, but their price was too high, and then we had one at 58 that was in that middle range of the 3.
And you mentioned your markups. I assume that's, aside from bricks and mortar, that's everything else, right? From bonding costs to overhead to supervision. Is that part of that equation?
Well, I should have mentioned this, and I meant to mention it. The RS means unit price includes overhead and profit, so I don't have to deal with that. But I didn't want to automatically have the contractors include performance and payment bonds because we only require those for projects in excess of $50,000. And I thought, well, if we did that, then we're going to be paying a premium that we don't need to pay. Right. So that's why I went with the markup on bond.
My only other comment, excuse me, is I should compliment you on the job order contracting process. As you mentioned earlier, the design bid build or design bid, contract is very onerous. And I think in the past, a lot of municipalities and owners have found out it's so costly to put a procurement out, RFP, and you go through the RFP, that could take, then you have to get your design team involved. It might take another year to get all your architects to make your presentations, and I'm talking mainly buildings, if you will.
Right.
And then once you get the design done, you have to choose the architect, and the architect makes the design. Then you got to repeat this all over again. So we, in the federal sector, it was very common from the time that you had a concept until you finished the building was 7 years. Now, I'm sure they started moving into design build.
Right.
And in certain instances, design build is great.
Right.
But I went to a conference one time, and the gentleman, there was about 300 people there, and the gentleman got up that was making the presentation. He said design build is cheaper and we get better quality for the same as opposed to design bid build. And I caught him afterwards. I said, well, it could be cheaper, but where does this quality come in? Because I've never seen a project, design bid build, that didn't have massive cost overruns. And sometimes the quality was questioned.
Yeah.
And that's just a comment I'm making. So I wanted to compliment you on this job order contracting. It condenses the period of getting the contract delivery, as you said. And I think that's a much more efficient way of repairing our buildings and doing general construction.
Thank you.
Hi, Annie. For the items that you would use under this contract that would be on the upper end of the $150,000, you know, up in more that area, I assume would be CIP projects that were already part of the approved CIP plan, correct?
Yeah, and maintenance projects as well.
Right,
There are
but I
always
mean-
maintenance projects that pop up that need immediate attention, yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Mrs. Washington?
I think your process is more effective and efficient. I think it's a lot better. Thank you.
It allows you to be timely and doesn't lock us into one individual company, so that you can select the best company for the particular job. Well done, thank you.
May I have a motion for this recommended action item? Someone? No one has board docs up?
I do. But, and I've said this before, Dennis Anderson is like a second cousin or
Okay, very good.
something, so I just prefer not to make the motion or second.
I move that the Board of Education approve the award of indefinite quantity job order contract for general contraction to Page Industrial Services Incorporated, Dennis Anderson Construction Corporation, and FHP Tectonic Corporation. The board authorized the issuance of individual purchase orders under the contract up to an amount of $150,000 each without additional board approval. The board further authorizes the use of the Contract for Aging Schools program and Qualified Zone Academy bonds projects during the term of the contract.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
And I echo Mrs. Weaver's request that you keep us updated, as you suggested, about projects that might be going forward with this.
Okay, be glad to.
Thank you.
All right, anyone have anything else? Okay. Our next board meeting is Wednesday, November 8th at 9 a.m. Moving deeper into the year, almost turkey time. And with that, we are adjourned.